Right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Emma Trehi. I'm the People Experience Manager for TNZI, part of MNF Group. And for those of you who don't know us, we're a leading provider of software and services for cloud communications. My role is to lead our People Experience function, otherwise known as Human Resources, supporting a global business group of about 400 employees and managing a team of 4 PX business partners across the full employee life cycle. I'm here to talk to you about MNF Flex, our global flexibility program, which we're in the midst of rolling out across our various geographies, to share what we've learned about working remotely during the pandemic and how it's informing our future flexibility offering. Research demonstrates that flexible working arrangements can give us a whole range of benefits. As you can see here on the screen, there's a whole range from in terms of recruitment and retention, engagement and loyalty, enhanced work performance, D&I. So there's a significant body of research that shows that across all industries, job levels and job types, flexibility drives financial performance and productivity. We know it's linked to increased revenue and impacts positively on client services. So we wanted to, as a group, to harness these benefits to ensure we had a positive impact on both the individuals and organisations within MNF Group. So we were in the midst of rolling out our MNF Flex as the pandemic impacted us. So we moved to 100% remote working in March 2020. Whilst initially it was a significant challenge, this pivot to remote working provided the opportunity to really test our capability for all our teams to effectively work from home. Regular employee pulse surveys demonstrated that this extended flexibility and with improved technology to support our work from home, our employees were really experiencing many of the key benefits of workplace flexibility, including improved work-life balance, reduced commute time, more time for things that really mattered in their lives, but there were also a few areas that naturally we could improve on. We wanted to maximise the potential for healthier, happy, more engaged and productive employees, which is why we were going down the MNF Flex path. So I mentioned there we did pulse surveys. We did a number of these throughout the pandemic period, in particular to MNF managers. So there are 3 key things here we looked at. What do we believe were the biggest benefits of the current working from home situation? So things like I mentioned there, the less time commuting, flexibility for individuals to control their own work hours, work-life balance, improved focus and overall increased productivity. Key successes for them were being able to maintain those levels of productivity and efficiency, seeing the team successfully adapt to working remotely, and improving collaboration and communication across the teams, which is interesting given it was 100% remote. Top 3 challenges were maintaining social connection, the morale, team spirit, and time boundaries between working from home. Also idea collaboration, that whiteboarding, that innovation piece being more difficult, doing this remotely, less visibility of day-to-day activity, and then VC also needing to replace short, snappy conversations, which was again another opportunity for connection. So while there were a lot of benefits, it also made us realise there were some limitations and barriers created in terms of culture, onboarding, joining, really making sure that people were sufficiently onboarded and felt part of our culture and organisation starting. There were wellbeing impacts, collaboration and innovation. So we really wanted to work with our managers to see what else we could do to improve things for them. So the other part of the survey was talking to them about their concerns and what about when we move this flexibility in the future, what have we learned during this pandemic that can inform things in the future. So they realized the managers flagged a number of key things that they were really wanted to focus on in terms of productivity, so making sure we were continuing to drive excellent time management and meet delivery timelines, but without impacting employee health in terms of burnout, providing the best customer experience and accountability for performance, making sure we had set that up effectively. I touched on onboarding there, what we needed to do to ensure that team members were integrated well and provided with all the social connection as well as effective training at the start to really understand the culture of the business and how we work together. Structure, making sure that we had a clear framework for the rollout of our flexibility initiatives to ensure we can ensure parity across wherever possible. We're a global business and a very complex business, but making sure as much as possible we gave equal opportunities to everybody in terms of flexibility, and actually that was going to look different in different geographies with different roles. Team impact, so making sure that we didn't negatively impact team cohesion and collaboration. What could we put in place in terms of technology, equipment, space considerations when people return to the workplace to make sure we could continue to meet our deliverables whilst getting the benefits of flexibility, and survey, and in terms of trust as well, retaining that trust, loyalty, motivation and engagement. The origins of MNF Flex, we started working, and this is our flexible program, we started working on this in 2019. It was due to a combination of factors, but really wanted to move to agile working so people were more involved with exactly how, when and where they worked. We're proud of the diversity of our people and recognise that everyone's got flexible, different flexible work requirements, and they'll be unique to them. We wanted to take a thoughtful, tailored approach to flexibility. It's definitely not one size fits all, so wanted to develop something that was suitable for our business and our people. We needed to ensure it aligned closely with our culture and listen to employee feedback to help us create a policy that doesn't just stand the test of time, but actively makes the company a better place to work for everyone there. So really our aim was really exploring how we could design employees' work and jobs to maximise their performance and the well-being of our organisation, our teams and the individuals within it. So what does MNF Flex incorporate? Flexibility is much more than just working remotely, which yes, we did get to test that during the pandemic period, but we wanted to look at flexibility in a whole range of different ways, and there's 4 key ways within our business. We first of all agreed that we'd move all roles to Flex, so MNF Flex means that everybody would have flexible working opportunity and a minimum of 1 working day from home, but there were 4 other components that it would be broken into. Flexible leave, so talking about a range of different flexible leave options to support flexibility. Flex time, so flexible patterns of work, so be that part-time, job share, compressed weeks, and looking at different structures there. In terms of flex choice, that's very much focused on those in our organisation with shift patterns, so looking at flexible scheduling, self-scheduling, shift swaps, those kinds of things to ensure we could move away from a less rigid work pattern. And finally, flex location, which really talks more to that remote working piece and how it looks within our organisation. So today I'll talk a bit more about flex location rather than the others, because this links to the remote piece during the pandemic. So MNF Flex has 4 core role types, but essentially they really focus on agile home and agile office being the 2, and they determine the difference. The difference between the 2 is your primary work location. So we've got 4 work types. Agile home, your primary location for these individuals is their home. Agile office, primary location is the office, so they may work 3 days per week in an MNF group office and 2 days from home. And agile home's the opposite, so they're working more at home rather than in the office. We've then got remote workers, so some employees will be designated to work at locations offshore and also may not have a serviced office, potentially may, but this is only possible for certain roles, and that's something I think we're going to evolve over time in terms of which roles are most suited to that type of work setup. And then finally, as I mentioned, there'll be others who actively have opted in to return full-time to the office, but with the option to do ad hoc days from home as needed. So the rollout of MNF Flex, what we did is, as part of the pandemic and the feedback we received during our testing, I guess, of remote working, we undertook, we got all the survey results from our teams, but we also wanted to validate this with further benchmarking on how well an agile working blend could work. There was significant, and you would have all seen in the tech space, a lot of feedback in terms of what other organisations are doing, a lot of headlines in terms of the office day being changed forever. Would people be actually returning to their work locations? We undertook research and benchmarking to validate our approach with MNF Flex, and that agile working blend of that mix of working from home and in the office was going to be the right thing for us. We wanted to make sure we realised all the benefits of it, but also were aware of some of the constraints. What we found from this is that sometimes the headlines don't tell the full story, in terms of there are some big headlines about organisations not returning to the office or the workday forever being changed. However, whilst it has definitely changed and flexibility is increased tenfold, many organisations are really just determining their flexibility stance in real time at the moment. The resounding majority are implementing hybrid approaches to workplace flexibility, with employees required on site anywhere between 1 to 3 days a week. There's a lot of discussion in terms of location agnostic or work anywhere approaches, and while some organisations are definitely fully set up to do that, they're probably organisations a bit further along on their flexibility journey than us, so they can manage the complexities in terms of legal, financial well-being. So there's also remuneration impacts to consider and adjust accordingly. So we're very much in learning phase in terms of the work anywhere approach, and we are receiving a lot of remote access or remote working requests in terms of working remote nationally, working remote internationally, and we're exploring that accordingly. But we felt that MNF Flex is aligned with our competitors and best practice benchmarks in introducing a hybrid approach. So as of the current status, we've developed an MNF Flex framework with manager and employee guides, workflows and comms to ensure successful implementation. Key to our process is core days. They're being adopted per team or project to BU as appropriate to ensure we offset the limitations of working 100% remotely. So removing that isolation, ensuring there's social connection, allowing that idea sharing and collaboration, and also, you know, enhancing our culture. So we, minimizing ideally the limitations and harnessing the benefits, making sure we've got technology, social events, there's whole streams in terms of well-being alongside to make sure that all of this is working to enable us to get those benefits of that agile blend. TNZI in Wellington was our first location to fully roll out MNF Flex due to the impact of current restrictions. Social distancing is now removed to a greater degree in Australia now in terms of the workplace, which is allowing us much more flexibility. We'll launch it here on 1 July, but TNZI is fully up and running, and while successful, we're getting very positive feedback from our employees. We're continuing to learn about the potential challenges and adapting as needed. And one of the key things we did there is the adoption of a Thirds Day, where all employees are expected on site for the purposes of social connection every third Thursday of the month. So there's a social event, driving connection, reintegrating everyone, I guess, and getting to ensure we cross-team collaborate and have fun, as well as doing this blend of work from home in the office. So the future success of this initiative will be determined by active ongoing review of successes, the barriers and potential areas for improvement. As I said, it's going to go much broader on 1 July for globally, but we've learned a lot in terms of TNZI and what's working, and we'll continue to review a number of other organisations, really learning in real time about what's working in terms of flexibility and the future post-pandemic. So just to give you a quick overview, this is our global footprint at the moment. So at the moment in EVM, so Melbourne, New Zealand, we're active in terms of MNF Flex, but our other geographies will now be rolling that out. Some will go to full remote, some will remain remote, but it's very much country dependent. But it's a program we're all very excited about. Our people are really looking forward to continuing to realise these benefits, but we know there's going to be challenges, and we've got training and a lot of other support mechanisms in place in terms of programs to hopefully ensure the ongoing success. Thank you.
Hi, Emma, thanks. So they're still having some issues with the moderator and his camera and his, or not his camera, but his microphone. So I'll be taking over. I'll leave questions for the end, but I'll go ahead and introduce Patrick Borgen from WCC Group to go ahead and be our next presenter. Is Patrick on?
Yes, I'm on. Are you seeing my orange screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Good, thank you. Okay, let's start. So good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to this session about the digital matching software. So what I've done is I have basically copied over the slide that you're seeing right now, which is coming from the conference website. And before we dive into the key topic, the digital matching, I will briefly outline the agenda, and I will provide you some context on the session description that you are currently looking at, which is the first item of the agenda. Then I will outline the difference between private and public sector employment and how that affects the employment services. And finally, and that's the main topic for today, is I will address the digital matching in more detail and how that relates to a broader solution view of what WCC does beyond just matching. So now I will provide you some context around the session description, and what I'll do is I'll just be highlighting a couple of words and phrases from that original text that you saw in the first slide. So the first one I want to highlight is the word employers. So employers can engage with both the private sector, like staffing agencies, as well as with government public employment services, also abbreviated as the PES, or they can attract workers directly by themselves. Workers, on the other hand, can be both employed, but they can also be unemployed. And I will use the words workers and job seekers interchangeably. Another factor I'd like to pick out of that text is the word private sector and public sector. Private sector, like staffing agencies, they attract workers, they attract job seekers. But the public sector, they have a so-called unemployment benefit to pay. So they have a little bit of a different interest in people and people getting back to work because they are a cost. Whereas in the private sector, there could be probably there is a margin into it. Then a little bit about the labor market, changes in the labor market. In this case, for example, the COVID-19 that we are all facing. Resulting in redundancies in certain sectors, like for instance the tourism sector, but also we talk about different ways of working, like Emma was talking about, working from home, how that is affecting us. And finally, within that context, I would like to outline how WCC, my company, can help you with the bi-directional matching. So let's have a look at the key actors here. The key actors are the workers that you see at the bottom right, the employers, which can be represented by the Public Employment Service. And then you mainly talk about the counselors who work there. But also you talk about the staffing agencies, and then you should think of recruiters. So who are actually being matched? Well, being matched is the employer. Think about a vacancy that's out on a job board, and a job seeker thinking about a resume or a CV. And we call this this CV versus a resume and a vacancy. We call that supply and demand. So what type of structured as well as unstructured data do we match on? And that's what you see at the bottom. And that could be skills, could be education, location, and I've put a number of dots there because it's actually all configurable and definable by yourself what is relevant to you. So what does WCC do? We help public and private sector with digital matching. So many of you might not be familiar with WCC and what we do. That's so hence allow me to shortly introduce my company. So we are headquartered in the Netherlands. We have a global presence, and WCC's vision is to sustain and to protect communities, economies, and countries. And our mission is to create smart software solutions that enable organizations to make data-driven decisions at scale and speed. We transform complex problems into simple and transparent solutions with our unique combination of intelligent matching software and industry expertise that delivers employment and ID/security solutions. So we have two focus areas. One is the employment, which I will address today. The other one, I just mentioned it, is the ID and security. If you're interested, I refer you to another special interest session about digital security, where my colleague will present tomorrow at 9:45. Some numbers, you see quite a big numbers here. If you talk about the caseworkers, as an example, there are 50,000 caseworkers in Germany that use the system. Job seekers, quite a big number as well. They reside in countries like Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, but also in Malaysia, Singapore, and in Costa Rica, for instance. And many of them are using self-service. And when I say self-service, that means that we are actually freeing up time for the caseworkers who otherwise need to do face-to-face contacts and help the people who are looking for jobs. So I think it's also important, because I mentioned already the private sector and the public sector. I think it's important to understand where a public employment service differs from a private employment service. If you look at the first one, transparency, a public employment service must have transparency. They must be able to clarify, to explain why a match was made or wasn't made. Think about penalties that are involved, benefits that are involved, because there is a cost related to this. The second one, they must be able to differentiate. When I say differentiate, I'm thinking of target groups, because different target groups require different match strategies. Two examples, young graduates, no experience, just coming from university, their matching strategy will focusing on their primary education. Whereas experienced workers who have been employed for maybe 20+ years, there we will focus on the work experience and less on education. And finally, number 3, workforce development. We also need to think about and cater for future demand that may require different skills. So we're thinking about developing people, upskilling people, training people, and all the bases therefore could be the matching. So in short, when you compare private versus public, I would say a private has more a short-term focus with a commercial background, having people placed quickly into jobs, whereas the public service has a more long-term focus. Unemployed people who are a cost to the public employment service need to be placed, of course, into a job as well. They actually have one important thing in common, and that is that they both are in need of getting good matches. So let's have a look at the software solutions that we provide and how they can support both the private and the public sector. So for the public sector, the solution requirements are a little bit more comprehensive. For example, as I just mentioned, the need for transparency. There's three key principles that are important here. The match engine allows you to do quite sophisticated matching, but there are 3 principles. The first one, data quality. Obviously, if the data quality isn't good, then the matching won't be that good either. So data quality is necessary for advanced matching. And I mentioned earlier that we do have software beyond the pure matching. I will touch upon that a little bit later, but we have tools to improve data quality. Second one is creating tailored algorithms. Let's stick with the example I just gave before. People who just come from university versus people who have a long-term work experience, they require different match algorithms. So that's what we mean with one size does not fit all. And then the third one, when we talk about labor market policies, that definitely applies to the public sector. I mean, things change, policies change, labor market change, but the system must cater for those changes. So when a public employment services uses our software and things change, they need to be able to configure those changes in the system to keep working according to the new changes. So these three key principles finally have led us to create a so-called employment platform. I will talk about that a little bit later, but that's the broader solution I was referring to earlier, just beyond the matching, the pure matching. The next one is about the the word intelligence. If you look at the session description, we were mentioning the word how technology combined intelligence can help us in bidirectional workforce matching. So when we say intelligence, we actually mean both human intelligence and artificial intelligence. When I say artificial intelligence, I'm referring to match algorithms. When I'm referring to human intelligence, I'm actually saying that the human is still the person who will decide what is going to be the best match. The artificial intelligence may make suggestions for matches, but the person who sits behind the computer or who it's all about probably will have a say as well. In this slide, I'm going to explain a little bit the difference between searching and matching. So when you have a search engine and you type in a couple of keywords, then the search expects a result that you define. And I always use the example of being an astronaut. If you want to become an astronaut, feel free to type that in, and if you're lucky, you'll find that job, but you might, or you probably may not be competent enough to get the job. So the match, that's the second one. The matching is it's actually when you do a match, you will get a job that you should be able to get. And it evaluates from two ends. The evaluation comes from the job seeker end, but also from the employer end. And that's what we mean with the bi-directional matching. And what you see in this slide is the little arrows. You see one job seeker, but they may result into many vacancies with various employers. Not the other way around. One employer may have several job seekers that may be a good fit for him. I will later on show you some screenshots of real life pictures. So the match will provide you a fully transparent service, and it also gives the public employment service control over how the supply and demand are being matched in the labor market. Finally, the last one is the value-based matching. In value-based matching, you actually have an extra dimension, and that allows you, for instance, the Public Employment Service, to add something additionally. For instance, when there is a preference to get disabled people back to work, then this disabled person may get a higher ranking than someone who is not disabled. Of course, all based on transparency, and in the private sector, an example would be the profitability of a match. In the next couple of slides, I will show you how the matching is actually working. At the bottom, you see the progress. It says match, gap analysis, referral, and update profile. So this one is about the match. On the left-hand side of the slide, you see the job seeker. And on the right-hand side, you see the vacancy. And what you see is that the job seeker is offering something. He offers skills, he offers experience, he has an education, but he also requires something. He requires a salary, he requires a location. I'm just mentioning a couple of them, but of course the actual ones are on a case-by-case situation to be configured. Similarly, the employer offers a salary, offers a location, but requires an experience and requires qualifications. And location is actually quite an interesting one here, because due to COVID-19, working remotely, working from home, changing policies, as Emma just outlined, you see that the location may be less important nowadays. So what you see is that there is a certain match, and in this case, the match is 73%. And this is a combined score. So the match score that you see right now is both the result of the job seeker score and the employer score. In the next slide, you see that if you go into the gap analysis, you are able to figure out which competencies should be or could be improved, and that's basically the gap analysis. So it allows you to transparently see what can be improved. So the next step would be to improve those skills, and that would be we call that a referral. And how do you refer? You basically looking for references, measures, which could be a training, but could also be an hours change, it could be a location change. And the result should be that you are basically a better match for the job that you are looking for. So in this case, working from home may make a location change easier. So once the measure has been undertaken, for instance, a training, and the competencies have been improved, you'll see that the match score will also be changing. And once you've updated your profile, then you'll see that the match score will go up to 95%. So now I would like to show you how that looks in a real life situation. So to visualize that a little bit, I've put in two screenshots. What you see in this screenshot is the match that is seen from the job seeker perspective. What you see at the top here, you see the word match. So he's in the match page. you see there are two vacancies being suggested that are a good fit. What you see here is the score. The score on the left-hand side is the score from a job seeker perspective, and on the right-hand side, that's the score from the employer perspective, and the combined score is the one in the middle. This is from the employer perspective, and what you see here is that for the same role that you just looked at on the prior slide, you see that there is a number of matches coming up, a number of job seekers, and what happens in practice is that a recruiter or a counselor will probably open up those CVs, and once they are interesting enough, then there is an option to invite the job seeker for an interview, to apply. And finally, I would like to show you the detail match screen. And the detail match literally goes into real details, and it has all to do with the transparency. So what you see here is that at the top level, you see the candidate demand versus the vacancy offering. And at the bottom, you see the candidate offering versus the vacancy requirement. And to take one example, you see here that the years of experience demanded by the vacancy is not met. That's the one over here. And by configuring the system, by configuring all the match criteria in a very detailed level, you are able to go in very complicated matching. On the next slide, this is the slide where I was talking about earlier. That's the total employment platform. So originally, many years back, we only had a match engine, but we due to the three principles the key principles I was talking about earlier, we have added a layer on top of that, and this is the pink layer. And in that layer, that allows you to, for instance, for enrollment, to come up with suggestions that improve the quality. The profiling will automatically put you in the right bucket. To use the same examples again, someone who's just been graduated from university. The search we talked about, and the match. So this is actually our, for today at least, the match is the key area. But as you can see, there are a couple of more areas that we also are able to serve. Then the system is fully configurable, and also from an artificial intelligence perspective, there is a knowledge management system in here that can be fed continuously. It's fully configurable, which is important because the public employment services, it's very important besides transparency that they keep full control of the system. And finally, on the top, there are the portals that can be used to input the data and to have a user interface. Finally, what can WCC offer? I think that we are able to offer full support for all employment services. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. So we've had two great presentations so far. We've had Emma with her MNF and being able to discuss more of the how do we pivot into going into the work and home environment and kind of adjusting to it as we go. And then now we've got the digital matching with the employer side. We're going to move on. For those that can still stay with us, we're going to go ahead and extend until the 55-minute mark. But we're going to have Elvin Prasad from Welchman Keene speak regarding cybersecurity, and I am assuming like working from home, correct? Hi, Elvin, can you hear us?
Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, so I hope everyone can see my slides.
Yes, you can see it.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll quickly jump into my topic, which is kind of focusing on raising awareness and capacity of staff and more to do with the human resourcing in the cybersecurity domain. We've been in this era of the COVID-19, and as we know, there have been a lot of challenges for years, especially the IT folks. So some of the key challenges that the IT enterprises have been facing, such as malware and whatnot. So I'll basically give some stats on global threats and trends that have been faced. So 91% of some of the surveyed enterprises reported there's an increase in cyber attacks in this period, with more employees working from home amidst the outbreak. And so these are the global surveys released by VMware Carbon Black. One other important observation was that the COVID-19 inspired malware. So a quick jump across the globe, noting 92% increase in such threats compared to pre-COVID-19 before the outbreak. Some of the 94% said that they've suffered breaches in the last year, which includes 100% of those in Canada and the Netherlands, and some of in the Nordics, which are almost close to 100%. And in the Asia Pacific region, we've seen 96% of enterprises in Australia, 92% in Japan, and 80% in Singapore. The pandemic has basically triggered a step function in increasing works from home employees, and even the devices that everyone is using from the homes, which often may be personal. So this basically creates significant threat exposures. Everyone working behind the firewalls from home, which are not part of the corporate networks, and using whichever devices possible from homes. So additionally, the typical operational risk related to the lost and stolen remote access devices, as we are working from home, or maybe some coffee shops here and there. So that basically increases quite a lot of exposure. So COVID-19 in a way is being used in a variety of malicious campaigns, including email spams, business email compromises, malware distribution, ransomware, and malicious domains, basically. So recent assessment conducted by the Interpol, it reveals that the COVID-19 pandemic has seen a massive shift of attacks from smaller businesses to critical infrastructure, such as governments and major corporations, and in most cases largely targeting governments. So I'll quickly dive into some of the challenges that are being faced here, particularly in the Pacific region. And as we heard in the morning from the ITU Regional Director, Ms. Huda, who highlighted quite a lot of new initiatives that the ITU would be working on, such as smart villages, smart cities, smart islands, and some of the notable challenges that this particular region had been facing. So in this part of the region, we've generally faced technical skills gap when it comes to dealing with cybersecurity and the related information security, data protection issues, which are often seen as things that are lacking in terms of our corporate structures within governments and the likes. So data protection and online safety policies within corporate structures, more related to internal policies and procedures, are often missing. Enterprise and employee safety and security from a HR perspective is also something to do with the learning and developing. So this is one area which needs quite a bit of investment. Staffing such as CISOs and security analysts and everyone who deal with security of some sort within corporate organizations, areas such as data protection, information security, cyber security. So the workforce needs to develop more, and we've often seen that most of these larger IT corporation, if you may, even banks and other companies, do not really have these sort of positions within them, especially things such as CISOs. We have IT structures which normally are often headed by IT managers, and how much of that the whole IT team involves security and data protection is something worthwhile looking at. And the case of the Pacific is that there needs to be more investment and focus in establishing such positions within the whole organization structure. And lastly, I think enforcement of information security standards and compliance is something which is a big issue here in terms of standardizing security, or often which relates to information security, more to do with ISOs. It's something that the Pacific doesn't really talk about because there's a lot of technicalities involved. There's a lot of investment, especially with standards. So this is one area that we wish to have more emphasis on. What Welshman Keen brings to the Pacific region, and how we work closely with the likes of ITU and other partners in the region, is simply we build more capacity and capability for Pacific member countries, which often relates to critical infrastructure protection, building certs, and making providing assistance to the cert functions, incident handling and response, working together with the ITU, who has been sort of focusing on establishing quite a lot of activities around national cybersecurity strategies and policies, and creating cybersecurity frameworks within corporate structures, which often is, as I mentioned, is missing from the HR perspective. And besides cybersecurity and the activities related to it, Welshman Keen also provides capacity development in other areas of connectivity and providing local assistance for telecommunications regulatory environments. We've now also been working closely with ITU in terms of emergency telecommunications, and that's something which is next on our agenda for the Pacific. And looking at future technologies, and I guess that's one area which we would be targeting, things such as IoT moving ahead. Our approach in the Pacific going ahead, building the Welshman Keen brand, will largely focus on looking at the Pacific challenges and the priority ICT actions that the Pacific region has in terms of digital transformation and progressing ICT for the Pacific region. We will really be focused on promoting cybersecurity awareness and training programs for government officials and the likes in the region, for the smaller countries which are really vulnerable, and those who may not have the resources to basically handle cybersecurity or establish HR capabilities of their own. And we will continue engaging with partners from the region, organizations, regional organizations, and developing our commitment towards ICT development in the Pacific. And one key objective for us is to work towards the global cybersecurity agenda. I think often this is talked about at the ITU levels, to simply build a safer and trustworthy ICT and digital ecosystem. And we sort of focusing that agenda here in the Pacific as well, to make the Pacific much more safer in terms of ICT services, and creating opportunities more for the telecom sector, which would has the objective to make impacts across the Pacific region in terms of I think the ITU director also mentioned the 2030 agenda of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So working towards that, I guess that the SDG goals are kind of really massive, not really just focused on ICT, but other 17 goals that the UN has. So I guess ICTs play a key role in basically every one of these goals identified. And one last thing before I finish off is the mention of smart cities, smart islands, and whatnot. And I think what Welshman Keen sees as the missing element or the missing link is focusing on smart people, and how are we actually building smart people if we're building everything on the other side of the fence, and how capacity building can be actually investing in smart people, and how capacity building actually adds on to building smart people in the Pacific. From a HR perspective, and this would eventually target more developments in building digital transformation services, especially during the COVID-19 era. So and this, I think there's a long way that the Pacific needs to go in terms of reaching some of the goals, and I think there have been some works already in the pipeline over the last 5 or so years, and we are seeing some of the benefits, but slowly progressing. And it would be interesting to see where the Pacific heads in terms of the next 5 or 10 years. And that is basically it for me, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin. I appreciate it. So we did have one more presenter that was going to be a recorded session that was provided to us, but Fred has told me that we will make it available after this session. It would be Ms. Pohiva from Tonga Communications. She was going to present on a country report and a case presentation for hers. So that will be available with this in this track that will be, I guess, recorded and included in this session. I did have a couple of questions. Emma, yours was quite interesting. I'm hoping that you're still with us here. As we transitioned over during the COVID environment, we moved quickly, and we went straight from a normal day to a lockdown and being sent home. And during that period, we actually wound up hiring new people. I think part of your presentation was talking about, just being able to get people to understand what your culture is for the company. What are some of the things that you guys do to, I guess, incorporate people that have never even been able to meet face to face yet and have been onboarded during this time?
Yeah, that was the real challenge that our talent acquisition manager focused on heavily during the pandemic. We were continuing to grow, we were fully remote, and how do you induct someone who's never actually been to the physical office, never met anyone in their team? So it was a whole range of different ways of using technology, connecting people within teams, making sure they're included in social things. We did lots of online things like quizzes and social events and celebrations, but also just making sure that the training was a bit more interactive. They had a mentor that was assigned to them to try and help guide them through in terms of learning, but just that continual connection and making sure that the connection that managers were having with their teams in general naturally included that new person, but probably at a more often in terms of touch points and check-ins.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it really has been a challenge for us, and it's been a whole year now, and you wouldn't have thought that this was going to be this long. So Patrick, yours was kind of a different track. It was talking more about matching the employers as well as matching the employees, and in the Pacific, we're always challenged, right, when it's coming to finding those key employees that we could use and really utilize it. It's normally like a shallow pool for us being able to find it. So how do you do the matching with what currently is out there from an employee standpoint of those resources that you can take and incorporating into this matching software platform that finds the right person for you?
Yeah, well, matching is it's bi-directional matching, so it comes from both ends, and of course it's not just pressing a button. There is configuration, there is implementing the system prior to that. So when you say matching, I already mentioned the target groups, right? I gave the example of students coming from university. It doesn't make sense to do skills matching for them. So for each target group, you need to figure out, and we can support it with our experience and our consultants. You need to figure out what are the right things to match on. Besides that, we also have, for instance, we have analytics products that help you improve your matches. So it's not just, configure it and go for it. No, it continuously needs to be improved. So if the feedback is from the data, because it's all about data, if the feedback is that certain target groups don't get enough matches, your algorithm may not be right? Or you may have made certain assumptions that are not right. So it's a continuous thing.
And I think, thank you very much, Patrick. And then going on to Alvin, I think that we had a really great group in just different formats of the HR portion of it, where, Alvin, we as carriers, we think a lot about our network security and we think about that type of thing, but we haven't really thought about, well, I'm sure we've thought about it and we've tried to implement what we can, but a lot of it has been just making sure that we've got our employees that are now working from home, their security aspect taken care of, right? And so I guess just from your perspective, I mean, for the Pacific Islands, we can be challenged at times when it comes to this. What are some of the common things that you see as far as the biggest red flags?
Yeah, I guess, before the COVID-19, I know there was not much work from home kind of concepts happening, and we often have seen that there was internal policies, IT policies on how to deal with the security within a workplace. But as we've been post COVID-19 in the last year, I'm not really sure how companies have been coping up with dealing with these kind of policies, or maybe establishing new policies for people working from home, on what devices to use. And obviously in my slide I mentioned people working from anywhere using whichever networks, which may be Wi-Fi is in cafes, coffee shops here and there. So there's a lot of external elements also involved with working from home, whichever devices which may be secured and whatnot. So it's kind of really difficult to really answer your question. In fact, from a policy perspective, and I'm sure most of the companies and corporate organizations would be facing these challenges to do with policies and handling people working from outside their offices, basically.
Well, I want to thank all three of you. I'm looking forward to hearing Ms. Pohiva's presentation. That would be the recorded one. We will be going on into our next one that George will be moderating, and that would be our regional developments that should be starting shortly. So thank you again for joining us. And if you have any questions, please feel free to either send us an email or throw something in the chat for us to hear back from you. Thank you again.
Apparently, I've been tasked to carry out a HR case presentation from the Pacific region, and focusing on the human resource factor, and in terms of the various HR experiences and challenges from the demand of a company. And in this presentation, I'm using my organization, TCC, as a case study. And I'll be focusing on the human resource factor, employees, HR experiences and challenges versus the demand of our company in terms of the vision, missions, and our goals. and all the changes that are taking place, and how TCC respond in addressing these items. And with the presentation, I managed to put in a title named "Ensuring the Human Links and Niches for Successful Response, Development, and Best Practice." Fred? Okay. Before we proceed further, I would like to have a look at the TCC organization, some background information. TCC is a public enterprises business established in February 5th, 2001. It merged between Tonga Telecom and Cable and Wireless. It's 100% government owned, meaning the government is the main shareholder. Service that we provide, all types of communications throughout the kingdom, locally, nationally, and as well as internationally, in terms of telephone, landline, fixed cellular, mobile, 2G, 3G, and 4G, as well as the internet, ADSL and fiber. And we also sell accessories such as mobile handsets, SIM cards, and phone cards. With the structure, TCC is managed by the CEO under the directions of the Board of Directors. It has 5 main departments, namely the admin and the other islands branches. We have the finance, network, aka engineering, marketing, and the internal audits. As you can see clearly, we have a picture of the structure. You can see for yourself. It's very clear and very flat. Let's have a look at the TCC's vision. Vision is to be Tonga's first choice for all communication services. And TCC also managed to identify various missions or strategies to be able to achieve its vision 1, 2, 3, and 4. However, in this case, I would like to focus specifically on number 4, where it says empowerment of employees by providing them with the necessary skills in an enhancing environment conducive to achieving their full potential. A brief look at the HR statistic or the staff statistics. TCC has a total of a number of staff, 333. We have 5 branches, where in Tongatapu we have this 264 staff there, Vava'u 36, Ha'apai Group 14, Ewa 13, and 2 Niuas 3 each. At this stage, we will look at the HR challenges and experiences faced by TCC at the moment. As I had mentioned earlier, TCC's vision focuses on the company becoming Tonga's first choice in the kingdom in all its communication services provided. And to achieve the vision, TCC identified several missions considered to be as best approaches. However, with the HR basis, we were able to identify the empowering of employees by providing them with necessary knowledge and skills in an enhancing environment conducive to achieving their full potential. The approach focuses on the company's HR factor, the human resource factor. And of course, TCC acknowledges that its employee is one of the most important assets required in order for the business to operate successfully, hence the challenge of effective HR managing. I would say that to survive productively, TCC must manage its human resource in the most effective ways from day one of recruiting, training, development, leading and guiding up to the termination stage. Existing in the TCC are some of the HR challenges like the policy and regulations. Keeping up with the law, policy is a struggle for some of us businesses, and TCC is not problem-free. At the same time, TCC endeavors to consistently enforce the adherence to the policy, rules, and regulations, starting from hiring, payment packages, and to work safety. Changes is one HR issue that is currently faced by TCC, especially with the company growth. Changes in the structure, strategies, and process, and others, they do change. And some of the employees, it's really hard for them to accept those changes. So TCC has a hard time trying to do or carry out consultation with staff on the company structuring or any changes taking place and how it will affect, well, the pros and the cons. Another one is training and development. Investing on staff via training is a high priority for TCC because we all know it brings results, loyalty, and productive team. However, sometimes it's very hard for staff to attend training, and the reason is most of the hardest workers level, they find it really hard for them to attend training because they prefer to be on the front line. But this is not so good overall because they need to be part of the training. They need to attend. So what we do is to encourage them. We encourage them to attend training, and also we try to do online training where we record the training and send it out via online for them to watch. And it comes to mind that we should start thinking, of course we have done that, to recruit managers or supervisors that have the facility or the capabilities to monitor or mentor the subordinates. Which also goes to recruiting. The fact that we need to recruit the best candidates with the right potential, because it's a lot of money wasting on finding potential candidates that cannot do anything. And as well as trying to maintain those potential employees. At the moment, TCC is focusing on establishing or creating staff packages in terms of the insurance, medical insurance, retirement packages that will attract and be able to maintain the staff and prevent them from leaving the organization. And also the workplace diversity, we have a lot of one-to-many ethnic here working at TCC, and hence the challenge of a different culture and different customs in terms of, for example, like the sexual harassment. And because it's a multi-dimensional culture, TCC has it's a must for them to run consultation on different cultures and customs, and for us to differentiate and to have a common ground where everybody has the same meaning, same common ground in how to treat each and everyone. For example, a Palangi would not accept a Tongan joke, and so is the European, and it is a major concern here at TCC. The second part would be talking about the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on TCC HR. Well, it's common knowledge that the COVID-19 pandemic continues to evolve, and there has never been a more pressing need for organizations to rethink their businesses for a changed world. Now is the time for organizations to focus their efforts on supporting key areas of their businesses that will help them stabilize in the new environment and strategize for the next. Given it's a global pandemic, much of the content of the general nature offering observations and guidance as to what would be the next normal. And likewise, there has been a great deal of discussions concerning the impact of the implication of COVID-19 for working practices in human resource management. What would be the impact of the human resource practice? Should there be a remote working or working hours flexible? In all, it should be acknowledged that there are two sides. While some industries experience negative impacts, there are others that has been positively affected. Looking at TCC, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has grown in significance and worldwide. Likewise, it has also affected the Kingdom of Tonga and TCC organization. Interesting, the impacts have been surprisingly good and bad. Under the Tonga State of Emergency Declaration, restrictions were laid down, covering national lockdown, social distancing, and nighttime curfews. And this Tonga has successfully adhered to. And it's also good to know that to date, Tonga is one of the 7 countries in the world still COVID-19 free. Nevertheless, the impacts of the pandemic heavily plays an influential role in Tonga and on TCC operation as well. For example, with the recruitment under the Tonga state of emergency, all recruitment for all public enterprises businesses has been temporarily suspended until further notice. As such, the rising number of vacant positions that need to be filled has grown, and hence the issue of understaff. Apparently, 6 staff got locked down in overseas, and to date, only 3 managed to return to Tonga and resume duty, with the other 3 still stuck in Australia and US. All those planned overseas official meeting, training, workshop, and conferences, like the PITA workshop, HR workshop, these are face-to-face. This cannot be done on a face-to-face. But good thing there's the online the Zoom meeting means, and also the employees' health and well-being. Tonga is still virus-free. Therefore, TCC has yet to experience any shift in work culture from workplace to remote. But nevertheless, preparation is currently underway should the need arise. For example, a national disaster and state emergency, as well as occupational and safety measures plans are already in place. At the same time, TCC strictly adheres to these state restrictions of social gathering, mask wearing, and enforcing hand washing and other health sanitation. On the other hand, there is a failure in TCC policies and rules to recognize the restrictions and effects of COVID-19 pandemic. At the same time, there's no proper control of the COVID impact, not only with specific TCC, but I would say overall across the ministries in the government of Tonga. And also there's the lack of knowledge and supply of COVID-19 safety measures for the company. In response, as I mentioned before, the TCC acknowledges its HR changes, experiences, and challenges presented by the COVID pandemic, Going forward to stabilize and ensure successful move on TCC, the company needs to rethink its strategies. In other words, TCC needs to make improvement in its areas, thereby contribute to stabilizing the business and be able to strategize within the changing world. For example, we are thinking of doing a multi-skilling approach, and we also need to do staff protection, where we initiate measures to help support employees' physical and emotional well-being, whether at work or at home. Boost the effective communications in global uncertainty. We need TCC to lead with responsive, empathetic communications and policies that help its staff feel informed and supported. We also need to maintain continuity of work, where we provide full resources and support employees' needs to be productive, especially as they adapt to working remotely. And also, last but not the least, the prepare for recovery that should align with workforce planning, with business strategies, and preparing an evolving market in order to stand up in a recovery time. Yes, Effort. It's a good timing because we just review our policy, HR policy, coming into effect on the 21st of April this year, where we included a redundancy packet, retirement, early retirement, all type of retirement based on medical, a whole lot of new provisions, basically based on COVID-19 situation, which is very good in the long run. I said, Fred, earlier on, training is a top priority. TCC really and heavily invest on training, and it doesn't have to be face-to-face. With the online Zoom meeting, oh, it's so perfect. It does not deteriorate or ban or prevent us from going overseas. At the same time, it's cost saving. And please do not restrict or limit the training. Come online, it's just perfect. But I'd like to give my sincere thanks and credit to PITA, and to you being the PITA manager. I'm so thankful for acknowledging the HR finally at one stage. And I think this is the first time HR conference to be online. And thank you so much for acknowledging that. And I wish that we continue to do so. And my sincere thanks to my fellow colleagues and the others, listeners. And I hope they can contribute. And I'm willing to be part of the team again in the future. Thank you.